All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Sammo?
We've got Crown of Swords. And I know these aren't live, so it doesn't matter, but I was a couple minutes late because I had to run back upstairs because I forgot I wanted a certain shirt for this one. Not throwing shade on Sammy or anything, but oh,
Oh, well, this should be a quickie because there's actually only two chapters left, and there's not an epilogue in this book. Um,
well, we've been
but
skimping on the spoilers in the comments
mhm.
lately because we've been going too long on the other part, so maybe we'll just go a little longer on
Yeah,
those.
the last one went long because there was a lot to discuss in that one. So, but this one there is some they're two long chapters and it's kind of meaty. Um, so there's certainly stuff to discuss. And the first one, where chapter 40, Spears, is we go back to Sammael and Grendel and the shenanigans he's up to, um, which are, interesting, and of course a juxtaposition with uh Sammael's end in the next chapter. Um, because he's uh so confident in chapter 40, or as um what is it that Grendel thinks that he's pleased with his own brilliance, and tells him that one day you're going to trip yourself up, which happens here in a second. uh but it is interesting. First we get Galina Casban's point of view, which we get a rare straightforward moment from Jordan. There's no read and find out. She just thinks she's been a Black Ajah for a very long time, and in fact sits high up in their Supreme Council. So is someone in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which only heightens her arrogance. As she's thinking, as she's being kind of abused as a prisoner here. How she moaned in a thick voice, "How can this happen to me?" Uh, which leads right into her condemning herself without even realizing it, um, because she's so completely arrogant that she doesn't think through, why are they asking this question? What are they asking? What's going on here? She just goes right into, I am Aes Sedai, fear me. I will remember those who assist me, and I will. There will be retribution for those who don't. And she has no idea what's going on, so she just digs her hole even deeper. But even in all this, there's a nice little nugget here that Jordan's been hinting at, uh, with things like with kind of the revelations of the kin, and some of the more we learn about the wise ones, and so the differences between Aes Sedai and other channelers. And we have this moment, where is it? I think it's on page 808. It seems that Aes Sedai can lie, Savannah said, and the
Mm-hmm.
blood drained from Galina's face. The woman could not know. She could not. Um, you made pledges, Galina Casban, and broke them. Did you think you could murder a wise one and then run beyond the reach of our spears? For a moment, relief froze Galina's tongue. Savannah did not know about the Black Ajah. So there's a little nugget there about the connection between the Oath Rod and being Black Ajah,
Mm-hmm.
um, which will come up again later, but was kind of touched on in The Dragon Reborn, where the girls are trying to figure out if there are any more Black Sisters left or what they're up to, and they kind of touch on the idea that they must Black Ajah must be able to act without the O's. They must be able to act differently, or they couldn't be Black Ajah. They
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to
and
do what they do.
it wasn't as prevalent during the first three books, because the internet was just budding. But the early message boards, like right before this came along, kind of were pretty much analyzing every word Leandrin said, every word that any of the other blacks had
Mm-hmm.
said, to see if they could lie or not. But I mean, this being 96, it kind of tells you right here.
Yep.
And I think because Jordan loves to troll, I almost wonder if he would have changed this section had the internet been more prevalent at the time, to keep it more of a mystery, because it's something that
Mm-hmm.
really had the fans going.
Yeah. Um, well, and then it's even more revealing when um Sammael shows up and gives her an oath rod and kind of explains about it a little bit. So there's a lot revealed in this chapter. Um, so even though it's not quite the typical action-packed climax of Jordan's books, of the previous books, there's a lot going on in this penultimate chapter here, before we get to the actual action. Because he's revealing a lot about the Aes Sedai and the Shido, or about the Aiel and the Shido, about the Black Ajah, and then we get kind of behind the scenes with Sammael and Grundle, what they've kind of hints at what they've been doing. Um, we've talked about this before, and there's kind of a, to me, kind of a fun contrast here in Savannah and Tharava and the other wise ones kind of in their little cabal, in their little conspiracy, and their attitudes, and then the contrast with the Sept chief Merrick, who's another one of those great little mini characters. You just see him for a minute, but he's so well fleshed out that it's a great little scene. But here you have the people who are supposed to, even more than the clan chiefs, the wise ones are supposed to represent the the pinnacle of Aiel society, because they are wise. They are the ones who hold everything together and make sure that Aiel culture um adheres uh to its ethic, to its centuries old ideals that have created this, fairly rigid and detailed culture that we only see bits of, when we start to see how complex the idea of Giotto is. And the wise ones are the ones that are the pinnacle of that. They are the maintainers and enforcers of that. Like I say, even more so than the clan chiefs, um, who are kind of more the day-to-day uh shepherds of the Aiel clans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yet, I've talked about this, before. To me, I think this is a great example of when you have a very rigid black and white person or society, when that switch flips to the other side, it flips hard. And I've used early 1900s Germany as an example, because uh, it was the height, especially Berlin, was the height of science, art, music, early cinema. There what was was big in Berlin. Um, booming architecture and all this, and then
Well,
a
as Gad
switch
Sad would
flips.
always say, these ideas are so stupid it takes an intellectual to come up with them, and that's where Germany was at that
Hmm.
point. They
Hmm.
they were they were the pinnacle of the
Yeah.
intellectuals of Europe.
Yes. Yeah. They were the pinnacle of the intellectuals, and you see where it got them. That within 2 generations, they had started 2 world wars and engaged in some of the most horrific, systematic uh, atrocities ever recorded in human history. And you see that here with the Shido. I commented way back on in the Fires of Heaven when they get to that town where Couladin has left those bodies hanging, and Rourke and the others are looking at it, and it's not that they have much empathy or sympathy for tree killers, but this is wasteful. This is almost like they're being Trollocs. They're so bloodthirsty that you you kill, as they say, this is why touching someone in battle without killing them is the highest honor, because as they say, even a child can kill, on accident, or even on purpose if they lose their temper. Even a child can kill. So this is, you kill for a reason. This is bestial behavior. Um, and yet the Shido are embracing that as, no, we're the true Aiel now.
Well, I think to play as devil's advocate, and I hate to be the one that thinks evil for our group, but it takes one. You have to get in the mind of your enemy sometimes.
333.
Yeah. The Shido can justify their actions, and they would have had to for their soldiers to do it, in a sense of, we're also sending a message. So there is a purpose to this. We're sending a message to those that are following us. It wasn't we're just killing them and hanging them because they're tree killers. We're killing them, hanging them because they're tree killers and we don't care about them, but they're also a message. And why not use a tree killer for the message instead of, something we actually care about?
It escalates and escalates and escalates and escalates until you get to where the wise ones are, right before Dumai's well, where they kill one of their own. They literally rip her apart with the one power because it's for the greater good, because uh they need to incite the clan to go after these Aes Sedai, because look what they've done. And it just so happens that she was being problematic anyway, and not really going along with their plan, because she was one of the last adherents to true Giotto rather than what it had become under the Shido. And here you have it again. Now they're just Savannah and Tharava and Rial just talking openly about I can't remember the name of the one they killed, and one of them talks about the other wise ones are all but convinced that Galina just admitted it directly rather than kind of the oblique thing, because Savannah and Tharava and Rial, they're gonna know that she's not actually talking about the death of this wise one. She actually said something more oblique, but we know the truth. Those who don't know the truth are going to see what they expect to see.
Well, so the modern terminology for this is actually great, because it goes along with the serpent and the wheel dynamic that Jordan has. It's called the purity spiral. The purity spiral is when you've created this in-group and you've rallied around this enemy. And the Shido, the enemy was all the other clans that were behind Randall Thor. But in order to maintain the order within that in-group, you constantly spiral inward and push any kind of slight deviation from the in-group as a new out-group. And it keeps spiraling inward and inward and inward and inward till it's pretty much eaten itself. And in all these times that we're seeing this, like you said, the killing of that wise one that just wasn't 100% on board, are times when they weren't actually actively in battle with Rand and his people. It was in the regrouping effort.
That's a good point.
It was the witch hunt within the group to create order out of people that were starting to kind of in a state of entropy. It was a regaining of order from the entropy. So now we band together because we don't want to be on the edge.
And also a scapegoating of, we were unsuccessful because, right?
Yeah, and
So
and, and
there's
that
an
that
element of that
creates a
as
new
well.
edge, and that's why it's a spiral. It creates a new edge, and then once all of those are eliminated, then well, you're still unsuccessful. You have to create a new edge, which is further in, and then again, upon. It was, they came for the communists, but I wasn't a communist, so or socialist. They came for the socialist. I wasn't a
Hmm.
socialist, so I said nothing. They came for uh, the
Trade
Jew,
unionists, the
the trade
Jews,
unionists.
yeah.
Yeah, and it just kept going because they needed a new outgroup every time to keep the order within. That's the purity spiral, and
And
that's what we're seeing here.
and then building on top of that is so page 811 is when Sammael shows up and he recognizes his own, basically, Uh he 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 knows what's going on because he participated in that and achieve levels of success that Savannah and Tharava can only dream of in what he accomplished in the War of Power. And so if you are someone like that, and we've talked about this of uh, before, if you have these um, psychopathies and sociopathies, and someone recognizes that and has it even more so, is even stronger, they're going to be able to manipulate you because they know from their own experience how to pull those strings. And so in the same way that you have kind of this escalation of arrogance of you have Galina and the hole she digs herself into because she's so arrogant, and then Sammael shows up and the Savannah and the wise ones are so arrogant that he's able to manipulate them and they dig their own hole without knowing it. And then in the next chapter, Sammael digs his own hole without realizing it because he's so overconfident that he has got Rand figured out and that he has himself protected that he's fine.
Well,
That
and not only that, Sammael to the Forsaken, everybody's an outgroup, even other Dart friends, even each other,
Mhm,
and so he has no qualms using these people that are what they call pretend Aiel.
mhm.
These people, as the Russians would roughly translated, use meat assaults, which is what he did with Merrick's group right here. It's a meat assault. It is plant this here to see what Rand's armies are going to do and see their location, see how they're acting, see what their strategy is.
Where is it? Here it is. Yeah, so the bottom of 812 is so
Oh, I got ahead of you.
Sammael
Sorry.
Sammael hands over the oath rod. Yeah, I want to before we get to the switch to Sammael's perspective, um he
Well, I
hands
was
over
still
the
on
oath.
Merrick's perspective.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That first. But he hands over the oath rod, he's explaining it, and this is from Savannah's point of view. To her surprise, Kadar was also observant. All you need do is have your Aes Sedai, um, or any woman who can channel, hold the rod and speak whatever promise you wish. He he recognizes the tension there, and even Savannah recognizes that he recognizes, but she doesn't care because she's getting what she wants. Power.
Mm-hmm.
A way to control those who have more power than she does, more raw physical power. And I mean, we talked about this when we kind of first met her and the ample bosom that she was always showing off because that was her power. That was how she I can't remember Couladin's um was it his brother
Yeah, his
that
brother.
that went in
Mandan, man.
Manduin.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So she latched on to him because she saw that he was on the rise to clan chief and she was going
Mm-hmm.
to help make sure that happened so that she had
The problem is,
that
as a
power.
young woman, she misread because he was not competent. He was just boastful,
Hmm.
as we
And
saw
then,
in the pillars.
and so then when that turned out, then she latched on to Couladin because, all right, he's the next power. And
And
then
he
when
was
he
much
died,
more competent. He just ran into Matt.
but we don't see this, but we can assume that behind the scenes, because the Shido wise ones had declared that Savannah was a wise one. So at some point behind the scenes, um, she must have recognized that the real power was not to be the wife of Couladin, the clan chief, or even the Karakarn, but to be a wise one and thus have power in her own right. But she's still got some pretender syndrome because the wise ones have gone through all this training, and especially some of the more powerful ones can channel, which is a weapon she just does not have and is a big threat to her. So now all of a sudden you put this thing in
Well,
her
add another
face.
emotion to that. She envies it.
Yes. So she knows that he knows, and she doesn't care because this is exactly what she wants. And she's so supremely confident that she'll be able to use it to her
Oh,
ends.
we were way off. Soladric
Okay.
was,
Manduin was someone else.
yeah, he was in the same part of the story. He was one of the Aiel that built Rhydian.
That's right. I
Yeah.
think that was Rand's first
Mhm.
point of view. I think that was the first ancestor that he was looking through.
Didn't mean to
Um,
derail, but I knew it was going to bother me, and I wanted to get it before Scott could comment.
um, let's see. We learned something about a binding chair and binding people who can and cannot channel. And then we get these little stone cubes that can magically form gateways and make you travel. Um, and then, like I said, then we get this great little scene where, we get a little bit of action as we start to reach the end of the story. Um, but then we also get, as always, we get extras with Jordan's scenes, which is we're seeing from Merrick's point of view the growing dissatisfaction, at least amongst some within the Shido, of Savannah and her leadership and the wise ones who are in charge. And then also another little tidbit that I like is on 817 when he shouts for the blacksmith and he has this thought of no time for proper courtesy to a blacksmith either. That even in the height of this crisis, that's something he thinks of and is mildly concerning to him. Um, and then we see that they've been dropped in the middle of two armies, both a force of Aiel and a force of Wetlander horsemen, and being being caught between this rock and a hard place, and they have no choice but to fight. And you can pretty well guess what happened to them, but then we shift to Grandel's point of view, and Sammael just tells us that, yeah, once again, Jordan is actually being direct here and just confirming what you suspected here, which is Sammael just dropped groups of Aiel in between his border forts and Rand's approaching army. Um, and this is what I was referring to earlier with Grendel, you know, foretelling the end of Sammael here in this escalation of arrogance of not only did he make these nonsense things that he told the Shido would open up a gateway while he was the one actually doing it, was he named them a fool box.
Mm-hmm.
And the IO use a lot of old tongue words and
Yeah,
phrases.
that was my first thought with rereading that was somebody in the wise one kind of range should have known the word full in the old tongue.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I think his saving grace there was the fact that he probably only divulged all this to that small circle of savannas, and so the others may not have even heard the name. Otherwise, yeah, wouldn't someone scratch their head and go, what? Um,
Which is funny because I'm looking at the name for it, and from what little I've read in the about the translations from the old tongue in the compendium here, companion, is they're similar to romantic languages where the description, the adjective is after the noun. And so the adjective being fool is baha baha. I thought that was funny.
Um, well, that's interesting because that is something that I was thinking. The word made me think of is baka, which is Japanese for fool or dummy.
Oh,
Um,
so you might have two influences there because he did draw a lot from Asian
mhm.
history and uh, culture.
um, and then Sammael talks about how he's scattered them all over the place, including, you know, enough to help get in the way of Althor's advance on his border forts. Um, but uh, one of the more interesting little nuggets here to me is down at the bottom of 819, where, as if reading her thoughts, he said, "You're tied to me as tightly as my belt, Grendel. The truth doesn't matter anymore, if it ever has." I love that line. That, I mean, he's basically admitting there that I conned you. I conned you. I played your own game better than you and tricked you into thinking that I had been promised uh, the status as the Mahale. But since you've been going along with my plans for so long, you're stuck with me because for the same reason that that Lanfear said Asmodine wouldn't be able to turn back to the Forsaken for help, that he was tied to Althor now, you know, because the others would just tear him apart. Um, for even reluctantly helping him. Well, same with Grendel is the other Forsaken are going to say, "Well, you help Sammael. I don't care why. You helped him, which interfered with my own plans. So you know you're in trouble." As well as that would just show weakness. You can't do that in a culture like this. If they see weakness, they're going to pounce. If if it was revealed that she had been helping Sammael because she got fooled, oh, that's a big fail on her part.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh,
Well, we get a little bit of Shidar hair in here,
yes.
which is kind of the. Remember earlier we had the Watcher, and then we have this scene, and then the Watcher originally I was like, oh, it's Shidar Heron, but then Morden comes along. I'm
Hmm.
like, no, it was probably Morden.
Hmm.
And then we get this scene, and like on the first read through, I was, oh my, it's maybe the Watcher was Shidar Heron because he's kind of doing a similar type thing here. He's following them, the same people he was watching earlier, and then going in after and seeing what
Hmm.
was going on. So it really kind of blurs the line of who the Watcher was.
Well, there's a little nugget though that goes way back to the first book, which then as the Murdral kind of fall into the background, as the politics and the conflict between people starts to take over. Um, remember they can move through shadow. They can move from shadow to shadow
Mm-hmm.
supernaturally, and the Watcher was wearing something called a fan cloth, which you can assume is basically the Predator cloaking thing, right? He's just in a shadow, so he's basically invisible because that's a Murdral thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But
and then he,
channelers should be able to sense him if he's because that's all that would also be a Murdral thing.
hmm yes. Um, so it is curious. I wonder if that question was ever asked of how do channelers sense Darkspawn and why didn't Grendel and Sammael sense Shidar Heron? Is it because he's not as he thinks here? Shidar Heron was like no other Madral.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe as simple as that. Um, but this I like the paradox here of um picking up the discarded spear, looking at Sammael's bag of nonsense. Much was happening outside the plan. Would these events churn chaos, or so it is it an amusing paradox of
Plan
you're
for chaos.
planning for chaos,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, and then into the next paragraph, if Sammael served chaos, then all was well. If not, dot dot dot. Um, and then it disappears back into shadow because it's somehow there's an essence of the Dark One in this thing, and but it's still tied. The Dark One's still tied to Shal Ghul, and so he can't be away for very long, even in this avatar. Um, and then we get to Rand, who is just now coming out of his basically coma from his injury, which Sammael kind of alludes to, and so you assume some of those spies around Rand are Sammael's.
Hmm.
Because he very confidently says, just on the page right opposite, Althor isn't going after anyone. All I have to do is wait. So he's pretty confident that Althor is out of commission, at least for a good while. Um, and this is
Well, you would have to assume that based on Payton Fane's
mhm,
prominence there, he would have to have connections to get him that status
mhm.
immediately. Because I mean, as a person, he really doesn't have the traits to get that status.
Well, but as Mordeth, I mean, he's Wormtongue from the Lord of the Rings. That's his thing. He's able to weasel in. He kind of burrows into people's minds when they have an affinity to his kind of evil. So that's just kind of his shtick. In the same way that we saw he had somehow wormed his way into Niall's confidence.
Mm.
Um, so that's just his thing. Uh, Anywho, and then stuff is escalating. Somebody has showed up here. Um, da, 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 da. Flynn and Narishma and Adley and them. So something's going on. Something is up that very much concerns Rand, but it's being referred to obliquely here. But before that, um, yeah, here we are. So 823. So he tells them that Fane's dagger came from Shattered Logoth. Once I saw it kill a man in moments with a scratch. Samitsu and the other yellow exchange startled looks. Yes, Shadow Logoth. That would explain several matters. You can thank Sumeko and that you're alive, and Master Flynn. Um, and Corell here, of course, East has done a part, including some things I think have not been done since the breaking. I always assumed that meant that was a reference to that uh Sumeko and Flynn linked, or is that
Yeah,
just me?
that seems like the most likely thing. I mean, it's either that or just coordinating efforts. I mean,
Yeah, that my assumption was always that, and that was a little nugget, a little setup for what we'll see later as the Ashaman and the Aes Sedai are kind of forced to work together, be around each other more and more and more. Um, so just kind of a setup for what it for there's some kind of relationship is going to have to develop here because whether they like it or not, they're on the same side, they're working towards the same goal. And so I always thought that was kind of an oblique reference to that. Um, there is okay, well before we get to that, I like I like the way the kind of the similar but different ways Amos and Cadsuan deal with Rand trying to get up when they're insistent that he's not well yet. So this is page 824. Um, well, and throw Min in there too, because she kind of starts this. I won't let them kill you, sheep herder, and I won't let you kill you either. And then Amos's method is if the Karkarn wishes to rise, I will have Nandera bring in the maidens from the corridor. Samara and Anala will be especially happy to give him just the assistance he needs. The corners of her mouth twitched toward a smile. Once a maiden herself, she knew close enough to everything of that situation. They are a couple of the more older aunt grandmotherly ones that kind of baby him, that see him as a surrogate orphan child of the maidens. And then you've got Cadsuan's reaction of, boy, Cadsuan said dryly, I've already seen more of your hairless bottom cheeks than I wish to. But if you want to flaunt them in front of all six of us, perhaps someone will enjoy the show. Legend.
Well, you skipped the line that makes it legend. If you fall on your face, though, I just may spank you.
And so Narishma and Adley are shocked. Flynn tugged at his coat as though arguing with himself. I think that is, Narishma and Adley, the younger ones. They're shocked that how dare you talk to the Dragon Reborn like this. I think Flynn is kind of pulled between both worlds of, yeah, there's a part of him that wants to be protective of Rand's honor, but
If Mama ain't
he put
happy, ain't
a
nobody happy.
and he put a lot of effort into keeping this kid alive.
Yeah.
So he's got to know, yeah, but they're kind of right, but I kind of can't say anything. What do I do here? And then, of course, Tashiva gets a little creepy of, yeah, we can clear the ladies out for you. All right. Now, as things escalate here and the ladies finally clear out and Rand gets an update from Adley and Arishma about what's going on, um, this is one of those moments that I've had before, kind of talked about before of he's on the one hand, I it's perfectly understandable why he jumps into action here. On the other hand, his I can do anything mentality is what got him stuck in bed for a week in the first place.
2 days.
Two 2 days is how long Adley and Narishma had been there. So they had been there for 2 days, uh, waiting to trying to report to Rand, and they couldn't because he was still in a coma and the ladies wouldn't let him disturb him. But somewhere in there, I thought it said that he had been unconscious for like a week or two. That's how long he was out of it after the injury and after the attempts at healing. Because his concern about the 2 days was that Adley and Narishma had been trying to report to him for 2 days. So Sammael had been tearing up his armies for 2 days. Um,
No, we've only been able to get a little water and broth down you since you were hurt. 2 days is a long time without food.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you are correct. I thought it was longer.
I was about to say I just read that.
Okay. Um, I think I may have been thinking
No,
Dragon Reborn.
he was relieved it was only 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so, and then he thinks, so bottom of 828 on to 829 is he's thinking about all his carefully laid plans to deceive Sammael that Rand would be anywhere but with the invading armies, and all made unnecessary by a knife in Padan Fane's hands, because Sammael knew that he was uh, laid up. Uh, so it's understandable that he would jump to action here because this was the plan all along, was convince Sammael that he's not with the invading armies, and then jump into the middle of the city. Um, but again, there isn't any there isn't any recognition of that happened because you so arrogantly thought, check me out. I'm Ta'veren. I'm the Dragon Reborn. I can do anything. I'm just going to jump here to this rebel camp and solve this problem in an afternoon. And
Mhm.
then Padden Fane was there. And even when you saw that, you still stuck around, which led to this. Now, it is kind of understandable considering how the story ends. I mean, the last couple of lines of the book is, like I said, the chapter 40 and 41 kind of go together of arrogance, compounding arrogance, compounding arrogance. Um, but I'm curious what you think of where kind of the setup for this level of swollen headness comes from, of how you see this kind of um escalation despite not just almost dying here from Padden Fane, but then not that long ago, a few months ago, he was stuck in a box by Aes Sedai and nearly carried off to the tower
Well,
because of
we've
his
got three
arrogance.
things playing here. The first one is the most obvious one that is set up from the beginning of the whole series. He's stubborn as hell,
Hmm.
and this was the plan. And this ruined the plan, but I could still make it the plan if I do it this way. And in fact, it might be better the plan, except that I'm weak. So there's the first one. He's just
Hmm.
plain freaking stubborn. There's the blending with Lews Therin, which we have gotten a lot of talk from everybody from Lanfear to Grendel to Sammael himself that Lews Therin was arrogant as fuck.
Hmm.
So we're getting that. And then we get the development of Rand, where he's constantly disappointed by everyone around him. And he gets this overarching feeling that we see through probably, I'd say, midway through Fires of Heaven, all the way through the next several books, that I have to do everything myself because
Yes.
everybody else fucks up or they're against me. One of the two.
I don't want to risk their life in some instances. In
Yeah,
other
yeah.
instances, I can't trust them. In other instances, nobody but me can do this because you're facing the Forsaken or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So,
So there are those elements. Actually, you kind of touched on one of my thoughts when I was thinking through this because you talked about the stubbornness. Um, and there's an element of that just like in the seventh, eighth chapter or something like that of the whole series. Uh, and it kind of it seems like filler, but it's not, especially if you've never done farm work. When they get back from Emmons Field and it's supposed to he was he's a teenage kid. He's disappointed. He thought he was going to hang out with his friends. He thought he was going to canoodle with Egwene, and bang her under her family's own roof because apparently that's fine. I hate you, show. But they had to go
well,
back.
that only happened because Bran got skinny.
Never trust a skinny innkeeper, indeed. Um, that's a very valid point. So they get back to the farm, and he has this thought of there's always work to do. You know, there's never enough firewood. There's always weeding to be done. There Animals always need to be looked after just to make sure that everything's right. There's tools that always have to be seen after. So there's that element of, you know, I'm tired, I'm disappointed, but there's work to do and the work got to be done because that's that. And that's
Well,
that's that farmer mentality.
and we're sports fans. Think of the greats. Think of the best. The obvious example is the Michael Jordan fever game, right?
I was
Where
just
he
thinking
was
that.
running a 101 or 102 fever and throwing up in between timeouts and stuff, and he still came out and hit the game winner. We've got butt kiss on the sideline with blood coming out of everything, and he's still in the game playing. That those are the heroes we were brought up with from in the sports world.
Mhm.
Well, you now just apply it to, the world is on the line. Rand is the hero we
Yep.
needed, not the one we deserved, right? Because he is willing to still do the thing that might be the best plan, even though it's probably going to kill him, which he already is mind fucked because he knows he's going to die.
Um, but you also get a little bit of the justification at the bottom of 829. Um, so 829, Tashiva doesn't understand the plan, uh, and he doesn't understand why are you going back to Ilion? This doesn't make sense. Why are we doing any of this? And we can save the army, Adley burst out, and then is embarrassed that he said that. But we will, Rand assured him. Just not the way Adley expressed, but that's part of it too. Is that was part of his frustration about being out of it for 2 days, and Sammael has been ripping up his army for 2 days. Is you know as much of a arrogant jerk as he's starting to become, he's still Rand, and he still cares and feels responsible for these men came to follow me, and they're here under my orders, getting ripped apart by a power that they literally have no way to fight. So I've got to do this, even though it's going to be a problem, even though it's going to cause me issues, as Min thinks. Where is it? Yeah, here we go. Men's side. No, actually, before that, because Rand's statement to men is telling and is going to pay off down the road of the maidens will want to come if they know men. They would want to, and he would be hard pressed to refuse if he could refuse. Yet the disappearance of even Nandera and whoever she had on guard might be too much. Men's side. I suppose I could go talk to Nandera. I might be able to keep them out in the hallway for an hour, but they won't be pleased with me when they find out. Uh, More to the point, farm boy Amos won't be pleased, or Cerelia. The things I let you get me into. So she's also going to have to. She knows that they're not going to be happy, and she's going to have to deal with the repercussions.
Well, I just
Um,
had a thought on Rand to add a fourth one. Think of it. Think of one of his biggest influences since he's left Aemon's Field, is Lan.
mm,
The saying, "Duty lighter than a feather."
mhm.
Or what was it? What's lighter
Death is lighter than a
than a
feather.
feather?
Duty
Duty
is
is
heavier than a
heavier than
mountain.
a mountain. Then think of like Euripides, the guy who ran from Marathon to back to Greece and died at the end, or oh shit, the guy who challenged the steam engine,
John Henry.
John Henry. Yeah, he did it till he died, but won. Duty was heavier because he needed to prove this thing, and that's the mindset of Rand right now.
Yeah.
As
So
as many great heroes in the past in mythology or even true stories.
and then so starting on 833, we actually get the battle for Ilion, which uh I I love the way Jordan unfolds. And we've talked about this before with the last action sequence. Um, I know we talked about it with his sparring session with what's his bucket, the the psycho noble. Um,
Torum, Ratum.
yeah, Riatan. Um,
Yeah.
that he's got this great way of making things bigger than they seem. Give in a few words, really evoking your own imagination to go wild. So, and it's doubly so because Rand doesn't even know the full plan. He knows his part and he knows the broad outlines, but he doesn't know the tactics because he doesn't need to know, and he's been busy with other stuff. So he's looking at the Legion of the Dragon, going, "What the heck are they going to do? How is this going to work?" And he doesn't even understand it. But then, so because of that, there's a little bit of mystery, and Jordan's kind of able to reveal things and let you infer things through Rand, which I love. And then you get the coolness of the uh, Saldean light cavalry just zigzagging and going nuts through the town. This is another one of those. I wish we had gotten a competent production crew to do a good adaptation, because this is another one of those. Man, I would love to see this recreated on the screen properly and faithfully.
Not with their sets.
Yeah,
Wait.
yeah. It's gonna. So one of the reasons I hate most documentaries, most history documentaries, and even though I love history and I'd rather just read the book, is the dramatic reenactments. They're almost always hot garbage. It's you're trying to talk about the uh the Battle of Gettysburg, where you had something like 130,000 men going at each other for 3 days, and you're just showing the same dozen Civil War reenactors running back and forth across the same field over and over. It's stupid and it's distracting, and it gives it gives the opposite impression. It gives a false impression of what you're actually saying. And I feel like that's what this scene would look like with this production crew. Is it would look like a bad reenactment.
And again, you have the people. You have the people that did Last Kingdom. What was wrong with what they did? Although
Yeah.
there might be some rights issues because the movie that came out of Last Kingdom, Seven Kings Must Die,
Mm.
was on Netflix, not on Amazon.
Hmm.
Where all of Last Kingdom was on Amazon.
I think Last Kingdom is now on Netflix. I think they've got it.
Yeah, so they must have
So they
sold
have
some
their
rights there.
yeah.
Because that the newer movie came out of it. The last season of The Last Kingdom, not the movie, was spot on. But yeah, but they did a lot of good battle scenes with sparse production money.
Vikings too. I've
Yeah,
referenced
yeah, I was
before
thinking that
that
was what I was
that
originally
that
thinking of, but
opening
then I thought of
fight
Amazon Prime.
that
Yeah.
opening fight at the beginning of the second season of Vikings, where you only had like 50 people on each side, and yet they made it seem epic because it was so well choreographed. All right. And then action, and then he feels Sammael and he goes chasing after him. One of the interesting tidbits to me here is okay, so the bottom of 836, while he's sitting here watching, he's broken all of Sammael's wards, and now he's not channeling, not even holding the power, just waiting until he feels Sammael come. And he's calling for Lews Therin. He calls Lews Therin, he called silently. The wind blowing across Ilion answered. Love that line. So he's calling for Lews Therin, and then where is it? Yeah, okay, so now on the bottom of 838, as he's fighting Sammael, his hands rose and he wove balefire, began to weave it. Someone else's cheek stung from a remembered slap, and Cadsuan's voice hissed and crackled in his head like the holes the red filaments had made. Never again, boy, you will never do that again. It seemed that he heard Lews Therin whimpering in distant fear of what he was about to loose, and what had almost destroyed the world once. So he he I love that even in this climactic action scene, Jordan is still messing with your head,
Mhm.
because a big part of Lord of Chaos and Crown of Swords has been, is Lews Therin real, or is Lews Therin a figment of Rand's imagination, a representation of the growing madness? And Rand has become certain that no, he's real, and he was insistent. I mean, remember when Cadsuan slapped him? It's his response was, he is real, and he from Min's perspective, he needed her to believe that as much as he needed to believe that. And so now you've got a critical moment here, and Lews Therin, Sammael was a big enemy of his. They were major opponents, and you would think he would show up here in this instance. And then you have this, so he doesn't answer, and then you have this moment with the balefire, and it seemed that Lews Therin was whimpering somewhere, afraid of the balefire, but was he? Or is that just Rand's impression? So once again, Jordan's kind of messing with your head of, is this thing that you thought you'd figured out, did you really figure it out?
Yeah, in which I also still hold to the maybe the taint itself is a loosening of the borders
Mhm.
between you and your past lives.
which makes sense because we are told the pattern is the actual prison of the Dark One,
Mhm.
which means that his and the two halves of the power are what drive the wheel that weaves the pattern. So his corruption is going to be able to touch that
Mhm.
through the twist of Sidon.
And he is also the Lord of the Grave. So
Mhm.
the grave being the house of your past lives. So,
All right, and then things get weird here as Sammael's booming voice says, I won't, Ilian's mine. I'm not going to wreck it fighting you. Follow me if you dare. And he draws him to Shadar Logoth, so this is part of his backup plan of why he was so arrogant of, if he does come after me, I've got this plan. I'm gonna bait him into Shadar Logoth. I'm gonna have Trollocs and Murdral that he's gonna have to contend with. He's gonna have to contend with the fog as well. And so and all the while, I'm going to be staking out a spot where I'm going to try and funnel him to me to kill him. Um, but then we get another wrinkle. Where is it? Where this strange individual. Uh, so Leah shows up, which messes with him, and is sad and tragic because she's gone crazy, but part of her still recognizes who Rand is.
well, I hate to say that it's Leah in the physical form because remember the visions of Mordeth himself in the other one that Mashadar made for Matt and
Hmm.
Perrin. So is this a memory of Leah,
Yeah.
which somehow still has her memories? You know.
Or is it something of like uh a kind of golem, not golem in GHO, but the classic GOLEM sense is, yeah, that's her body and it's still moving, but her mind has been so corrupted she's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But there
But
is
you
this
would need
moment of
sustenance for that.
recognition. Yeah.
You would need sustenance for that. I think it's more of like it's the you know well rattlesnake the tail that rattles is actually supposed to resemble a bug, so that the mouse or the lizard comes up to try to eat it, so the rattlesnake has a meal. That's the way Mordeth and Mashadar work. Is they lure people to do their bidding, which one of the things is to take pieces out, as they did with Matt.
Hmm.
And the other thing is to bring people to their death for feeding. And what better way than to use the memory of those that have died, those that were once there?
And then, as if Leah being there wasn't a mind F enough, we get some rando who shows up on page 846. A hand grabbed his wrist. You're a fool, a man's deep voice said. Count yourself lucky. I don't care to see you die today. The hand began drawing him up. Are you going to help? The voice demanded. I don't intend to carry you on my shoulders or kill Sammael for you. And there's this, kind of weird tension, awkward exchange here of who are you? Um, just say I'm a wanderer passing through. Do you really want to talk now? So whoever this is using to his advantage that, you know, Rand doesn't have time to think because they're being attacked. Uh, Powers flashing down that Sammael's throwing around. You've got the fog, you've got everything else. But I mean, Rand clearly knows something ain't right here. Who is this guy and what's going on? And then you add to that uh where it kind of ends up of the two bars of balefire hitting each other, which does something weird to both of them. And then um Rand realizes he didn't feel the other guy channeling. So what's up with that? Which we should be able to figure out by this point. Um,
Don't cross the streams. Don't
don't
cross
cross the
the
streams.
streams.
Yeah, so the bottom of 848 is where, again, Scene's doing quadruple duty. He's just revealed some things and set some more things up here. Suddenly he realized that he had not felt Sidon when the man made balefire either. Just thinking of that, of the two streams touching, made his vision double again. Just for an instant, he could see the man's face again, sharp where everything else blurred. He shook his head until it was cleared. Um, who in the light are you? He whispered, and after a moment, what in the light are you? Good question. All right, so I don't think there's much we could say about that because, massive spoilery things coming. Um, I this is an interesting bit to me of his attention gets pulled away because Leah gets grabbed by Mashadar, and he can't leave her like that. So the balefire that he was about to blast Sammael with, he hits Leah with, and then sweeps it over to Sammael. So, because Jordan's not done screwing with your head yet, he wants that little kernel of, well, did he actually? Rand thinks that he didn't feel any channeling, he didn't feel a gateway, he didn't feel anything like that. That he got him, right? I think I get him. Yeah, I got him. But Jordan's gonna leave that little nugget of doubt in your mind because he's a jerk. Um, let's see. And then he hops back to the city with Gregorin, one of the high nobles of Ilion, offering the crown of Ilion to Rand, and Bashir contented himself with a bow of his head. He was uncle to a queen, after all, but Dashiva cried out, "All hail Rand al'Thor, king of the world!" Flynn and the other Ashaman took it up. "All hail Rand al'Thor, king of the world! All hail the king of the world!" That had a good sound to it. And then we get kind of the usual close of, Jordan kind of reminding you that the real world doesn't work out like a story, that there's a fog of war, that all these stories start to spread, they start to twist. Here's the way different people interpret it, here's the way different people hear it. And so then it gets a new name, the Crown of Swords. All right. So that wraps up a Crown of Swords. And now we are going to get into any spoilery thoughts we have. But first, we need to pause a second. All right, so this is spoiler time, so go away if this is your first read. And we'll also look back at the last episode at comments, which can also often get spoilery. We need to start with comments because I broke my brain. We had a long pause there. I had to go pick up my kid. And while I was doing that, I made the mistake of listening to a podcast and hearing news. And have you seen The Stand? Apparently nobody at the WHO or CDC or government has, because they're idiots. But let's move on.
All right. It's a pity that Elaine didn't hear Susan's story. Scott, you got to check your autocorrect on your. You must be doing this from your phone because a lot of times I could tell with the names that it's definitely autocorrected. So I'm going to go ahead and translate. It's the pity that Elaine didn't hear Swan's story about her uncle that was told to Matt. And yes, that actually, the more I thought about it after I'd asked the question in spoilers last time, that did Elaine ever save Matt? And it turns out never. And I'm trying to I've only read the last one once, and I'm trying to think of what their interactions were when they all got back together. And I don't think there was ever any resolution or acknowledgement of this moment again.
I don't think so. No. My brain was sitting here thinking back with that comment there is, does Elaine have a similar role model or story in her life? And I can't think of one, which would kind of indicate why she so readily believes what she initially believes about Matt, via Nynaeve's and Egwene's telling of it. Because it's such a great scene and such an insightful moment. I mean, it's why Sawan is where she is. It's how she reaches where she is because she can read she can read people every bit as well, if not more so than Matt. And she pegs Matt exactly of this is who you are. I know who you are, and this is who you are.
I
She
thought it's
pegs
because
him
she grew up in a
from the beginning.
bayou with mountains in the background.
Yeah. Um,
That was
oh,
one
I
that
mean,
got me with that the show because it explicitly describes Tyr, a lot of times, and it's very flat. You could say that's one of the fingers or the things leading up to it, the tributaries or whatever. But there was like this wannabe Lord of the Rings background with mountains and
mhm, mhm.
yeah, it was.
Yeah. So, but there is an element of that really rough and tough. The one thing they got right there was that interaction with her father and the helping her father, you know, the difficulty in manual labor when you don't have modern conveniences and tools and machinery and whatnot, and just the difficulty in getting food and and then
Well,
being
that's so why she's
around
so rough and
people
tough and
like that.
lesbian.
Yes, exactly.
I like to see
But
you go. "Ah."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, yes, that is her defining trait in the show versus in the series where it's sh- she from an early age, from her earliest memories would have been um tempered in this crucible that in the same way that uh Rand was tempered in the same kind of way, just in a different environment. Um and and so was Matt and her uncle. So yeah, they were loafers. They would shirk any kind of uh job or labor if they had to. They were jokers. Ne'er-do-wells is how they were seen, but that core was still there, which is why he died running into a burning building and why Matt put his life in danger routinely running into burning buildings um, later, literally. Um, so she's able to see that Elaine's upbringing was she probably wouldn't feel like it because her her teaching was very difficult. The things she had to learn were very difficult, and it was very important that she get it right. But her upbringing was very coddled, um, because it was always this is who you are, this is who you are going to be, this is who these people are. They all fit into their neat little hierarchical places, and so she never had that tempering until she went to the tower, and not even that was the kind of the beginning of it, but really it wasn't until she left the tower and got a rude dose of the real world.
I'm trying to look based on the next comment about Jordan's motives in this topsy-turvy
Mm,
society. What Jordan's influences were for Ibu Dar, and I came across that it's a dead ringer for New Orleans, which actually
mm,
makes a lot of good sense, especially if you do Swoven Night as Mardi Gras.
mm.
Uh, but then, per the comment, that still doesn't address the aggressiveness of the women, uh, unless there's something. Yeah, I
Well, it,
mean,
it could be a bit of a kind of a Moulin Rouge thing, the French influence of New Orleans,
mhm.
and the more open and assertive, at least that French women were purported to be. Um, and so that may have been an influence there too, especially if um the geography of the city and some of the culture was influenced by New Orleans. That may have kind of led down a train track um to a bit of French society thrown in there, especially the kind of the more libertine post-revolution elements of it.
Yeah, and the thing about the United States is we're the most exploratory of the exploratory people. So you think of French society and its sexual exploration and push that over, kind of kick that up to 11 with the ones that would come to the New World. It's not like the British, where the actual more conservative people left because they wanted to practice their religion. On the French side, it was the New World. Awesome, let's go.
I can't remember who said this. There's an old quote from I think from a monarch, something to the effect of, um, "I speak Latin to God, French to women, and German to my horse."
Oh, genau, which in German is basically an agreement of exactly.
Um, let's see. I'd say Oliver going missing was a little too much plot driven. One of very few times Jordan writes something that wasn't necessary in the sense of the overall story. It is a bit of a contrivance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's tough because everything's plot driven. It's just how much flows in the proper order. And if I was to justify, I would say Oliver is a rebellious young child, uh, prone to doing something like that, especially if he's been cooped up with his readings for a while. But at the same time, yeah, it was a slight stretch. I wouldn't say it's a big
Yeah,
stretch, but it was a slight
it's
stretch.
especially since so much of what we get of his character through that book is his readings about what a little ladies man he's becoming. So we don't get that he likes to run around with the street urchins because he likes to sit on the lap of pretty ladies and
Well, and that's the
you know
thing. It would have made more sense if Rizal wasn't there to tell Matt. It would have made more sense if Rizal wanted to go out carousing and Oliver was with her.
yeah, or we had just had a little bit of a scene earlier because he says he was in his red coat or whatever, but he likes to give them away. And so we get kind of a post hoc that he has done this before, but there wasn't ever really a setup for it,
Mm-hmm.
which it is one of the things that kind of uh, slightly, I won't say ruins, but detracts from that whole sequence. Is I've always felt it was a touch contrived. It is one of those kind of, you know, annoying movie tropes where uh the hero can't, you know, defuse the bomb until there are seven different things that interrupt it when you think he's almost about to win, and it's, oh no, there's this other thing, oh no, now there's this other thing, and it's just get on with it already. um
That's the,
eh,
the the majority of my dreams, by the way, where it's always I'm trying to do something, but there's always something little that keeps distracting me. And it's
yes.
probably a parallel to my real life, but
All right, Matt was only mostly dead in Rudine.
yeah,
Yep.
I gave that one a like, I think on my personal account, because
Yeah.
that one made me uh chuckle giggle inside. Belly laugh.
Yes.
It made me belly laugh.
Which of course is partly alive, which um
To
th th
blade, with which would also fit with Matt's character. Oh, he lost a bet.
um which is actually makes me think of something that I had to kind of bite my tongue on when we were going through the finale. There was that this is one of those few things that Jordan answered very directly multiple times, which was no, he wasn't dead in Ruidine. The die and live again was getting smoked by lightning and then getting bale fired back to life. Um, just like I'm kind of curious because of how long. I mean, he literally took it to his deathbed of who killed Asmodine because he was enjoying so much lurking on the message boards and things, and you know, enjoying the flame wars and the frustration of the fans. but he didn't do that with Sammael's death because there's a little bit of that ambiguity there. That there was a fair bit of, is he really dead,
Oh,
out
I
there.
remember thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a fair bit of that out there, but he said directly, I believe the quote was Sammael's toast.
Which is funny because we look at Jordan and like you said, the two faces of Jordan here, enjoying the internet banter
Hmm.
and the bluntness in certain situations. I wonder if those times he was blunt, he actually feels like he failed in his own writing.
Mm.
Because we do that, or at least I do that with our videos here, where I'll look back and I'll just be like, man, I could have said that a lot better. I don't think I got that point across. And I just
Hmm.
want to just kind of make it right and be blunt about it the next time. Whereas if I said what I needed to say and people get it wrong, but it's still, I mean, it's a nuanced conversation, then it's like, okay, well, let people speculate.
Yeah, there was a rather infamous exchange once where somebody asked him if death took him was an allusion to Moradin, which means death, and he was shocked and offended that someone would think he was that cheesy. So he said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
All right. Now, did we have any actual spoilery things?
Uh, I wrote down when we were talking about Galina, talking about
Mhm.
her being Black Ajah. This is one of those moments in the books where we're still on the precipice of, is Elida a black? Is Elida a black? And then all we have is she sent Galina. We have a few of her thoughts inside. We have Alvierin working against her,
Mhm.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that she's not black. And so this is one of those where it kind of fed into the discussion. Well, Elida's black because she put Galina in charge. And
Mhm. Mhm.
well, the spoiler part of it is we know Elida's not. She's just the worst. There's a difference.
Yeah, she's awful. But yeah, Galina was in charge because she also stood very high in the red. And you
Yeah.
got kind of from her little bits of point of view, you get the red and the black went along together pretty well in Galina's mind, at least.
Yeah. Well, Elida is the very definition of the road to hell is paved in good intentions.
Mm, yeah, that's a good point. She is absolutely certain that she is the savior of the tower and thus the world.
Mm-hmm.
And everything she's doing is going to lead to victory at Tarmangaiden and her name being remembered in the histories as the greatest Amarillan ever.
She's basically a white cloak that can channel.
That is that is an interesting parallel that her contrasted with the more zealous white cloaks that I had not really considered that before. She's even more of a zealot than Pedro Niol was.
Yeah, no, she is Eamon Valda. We talk about characters
Mm,
paralleling. She is Eamon Valda because he is whatever it takes means to the end for the light, even if I have to be dark.
mhm,
And she's the same way. If
yeah,
I have to crack a few eggs, we're making this fucking omelet.
yeah, yeah. Um, the only other thought I had, while we were going through the uh kind of the Rand not really having learned his lesson yet from what happened in Lord of Chaos and then what happens here with the dagger is it is kind of a longer arc because he finally learns his lesson at the end of Path of Daggers with how terribly everything goes there. That he finally can't, and partly I think because it finally becomes personal, because even when he's the one in danger, it's not personal to him. It becomes personal when all of these decisions that he's been making once again put men in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the the attack that happens on him at the end of Path of Daggers, and that's what
Well, there's
sets him
also that
up.
he kills half of his own army.
Yes. Yeah, and he takes that very personally of not only was it an epic failure, but look at the cost for nothing as he sees it. So it it is a massive low point for him, which sets him up for where he's going to be in Winter's Heart. Which is why Path of Daggers was always kind of a meh to me because it is very much a setup, and it's partly because Winter's Heart is so good. So much happens, and it's so good, um, that it's kind of it's up there in like my top five, which just makes Path of Daggers seem that much more like a filler episode.
The other spoiler I had is page 824, about halfway down, when they're arguing over Rand getting up, and Dashiva says, "If you
Uh-huh.
want us to clear the women out," and then the line. See, some of the tidbits I'm going through are the clues to who was who. And Dashiva, the first time I read the books, was somebody I wanted to be good, and just to be this weird, quirky guy that's going to be somebody important in the long run, which he was, but just on the other side.
Hmm.
Well, and here's one of the clues that he's
Yeah.
something more than he is, and it fits into the character of the person he actually is.
Yeah.
The plain-faced man began preparing flows, not shields, but complex weaves of spirit and fire that Rand suspected would put anyone where they laid on it too much pain to think of channeling. Again, the guy who didn't know how to heal but seemed to be satisfied with what was going on. He's got this thing in the works that is going to just wreck your body
Hmm.
in a way that you've never been wrecked before.
It's like it's like a channeled power taser that goes up to 11.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there was talks of him and Simmeridge getting along. So this would make sense because they probably shared notes.
That may have been, yeah, that may have been part of Asmodean's lessons to Rand when he asked about the different Forsaken.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also you look at the making of the blades in Thakandar. The more painful the death of the subject, the more powerful the item
Yeah,
that was made.
yeah,
So
that was creepy.
yeah.
All right, well, that's all I had, except to once again let us Scott, let us know what you prefer. Do we go on to the Path of Daggers now, or do we want to take a short break through New Spring, which I'll have to reread as we go because I have not read it on my past two or three rereads. It's been a long time since I've read it. I think I read it twice a long time ago, and then I read the graphic novel. So I remember the high points, but I don't remember the details.
All right. Well, going forward, we got our social episode. Now these are coming up today. And I think I'll have all three up today, but they processed overnight. So, and starting this was when the first moment off of work. So they're all going to kind of go up in a row this week, but they will all be on. This one will be on time. It'll just be combined with others. So if you're looking for this one, it'll be properly labeled. Next Tuesday, did we talk about subjects for that?
No,
You
when
just
we
brought
were
something up you listened to.
yeah, when we were done, we talked about some other fitness things that we might get into because they're kind of deep, and then there's some more awfulness in the news world that we may get into because
And I've
boy,
got some more thoughts on love and marriage. Also going forward, and I don't know what this is going to change, but I did apply for the graduate program of psychology at UHCL, and I don't know if I'm accepted or not, and I don't know if I'm going to have to take any prereqs or anything over the summer. So we'll see what comes out of that, but we will adjust our schedules accordingly, and we will keep you posted. So,
all right, we'll see y'all Tuesday then.
all right, later.